RadioNOW 100.9's Indy Connection with Emily Metheny.
Hi, I'm Emily Metheny, your host, and today we're going to talk a little bit about some veteran services here in Indianapolis. Veterans Day is coming up on November 11th, and if you've ever wondered why Veterans Day is celebrated on 11/11, to simply put it, it's because on the 11th day of the 11th month, at the 11th hour, the armistice ended World War I. In 1938, November 11th became a legal holiday known as Armistice Day. Following World War II in 1954, Armistice Day was adopted to celebrate veterans as well, and it kind of turned into the Veterans Day we know now. I spoke with Pete Cowden, the Wayne Township Veterans Affairs Officer, and Christa Sutton, the Suicide Prevention Case Manager from the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs. As someone who's not been in the armed services or anything, what technically qualifies you as a veteran?
Now, that's a little bit of a tricky question. In my mind, I think in most people's minds, you would be qualified as a veteran if you raised your right hand and took an oath to defend the Constitution. But when you start getting into different kinds of benefits, different nonprofits have different definitions. The VA has one definition. But generally speaking, I think if you took an oath to defend the Constitution, then you're a veteran.
But in terms of the VA, it's 2 years of active duty service. So as a National Guard member, which we have 14,000 National Guard members in the state of Indiana, so it's a very large population. If you are a combat veteran, so if you were sent to a combat zone, then you would qualify as a veteran. And also if you were federally activated for that 2-year service period, then you would be qualified. And then alternatively, if you had an injury even on day one of your military service, and that is service connected through the Veterans Benefits Administration, then you also, in the terms of just medical care at the Veterans Health Administration, then you would qualify for care.
Excellent. And Pete, can you tell me a little bit about what you do as the Veteran Service Officer for Wayne Township?
Yeah, so working for Chuck Jones, the township trustee, a big part of the job is emergency assistance, not just for veterans, but for anybody who lives in the township. So that's part of my job. Any veteran who comes in and is in need of some sort of emergency assistance, whether it be injury at work that's prevented them from working, or a car accident, or anything like that, we can help through the trustee side. But additionally, I'm a certified veteran service officer, which means that I can help them put in claims with the VA for health care or for a service-connected injury. And I think most veterans, not all, but most veterans have some sort of service-connected issue, even if it's as small as, say, hearing loss. And as Christa, said, once you are service-connected for some reason, then you become eligible for VA health care. So I see both. I see homeless veterans in need of emergency assistance, as well as just veterans who haven't accessed their benefits yet and want to come in and talk about that.
And Christa, you're with the Veteran Affairs. Can you talk about a little bit what you do?
Sure. Well, specifically, I am the suicide prevention outreach specialist. So my job is to spread awareness and education regarding suicide prevention warning signs, ways that we can intervene just as, a friend, a family member, a community partner. But in the greater scheme, my hope is to connect veterans with the care they need, whether that be at the VA facility or in the community. So there are lots of resources out there, financial, employment, education, mental health, and primary care. So I'm happy to connect anyone who needs that care.
And how can someone get in touch with you, Christa?
Well, so you can contact me directly, and I'm happy to give my phone number if necessarily. It's 317-988-9388. I'm happy to help anyone in care. I always say if someone is in crisis, please call the Veterans Crisis Line. That is actually also the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, so anyone can call. But press 1 will connect you with the VA if you want. That number is 1-800-273-8255. That's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Or you can always just walk into the hospital. We have same-day walk-in mental health services. Our ED is staffed 24 hours a day with psychiatric staff, so we are always here to help.
Excellent. And Pete, how would someone get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I work at the Wayne Township Government Center off West Washington. So they can either call the office number or my cell phone is 317-518-0309. So if you're a veteran in Wayne Township in need of some assistance, feel free to give me a call. Even if you don't live in Wayne Township, but you're not sure how to get in touch with your veteran service officer or with whatever assistance or benefits you're looking for, feel free to call and I will definitely connect you to the right person.
And what are some of the resources currently available through the VA for mental health specifically?
Well, so I would say step 1 is if you're not enrolled in the VA, then please come in. You just need your DD-214 and a state ID, preferably last year's tax return, just so we can kind of gauge what your copay may be. You can walk into the atrium at the VA hospital on 10th Street or to any community-based outpatient VA clinic, medical clinic, and they will be happy to enroll you. Or you can reach out to a veteran service officer like Pete, and they can help direct you. Also, for mental health services, we have, like I said, the same-day walk-in services, so we are happy to help you both in primary care. We have primary care psychologists available, or we have a walk-in clinic on the 5th floor of the hospital. Those walk-in services are also at your community-based outpatient clinic. So if you're in Terre Haute, if you're in Lafayette, Shelbyville, we're happy to help. We also offer specific, if you're already enrolled, specific PTSD, EB, like evidence-based psychotherapies, supportive therapy, group therapy. So we also offer home-based psychology services and primary care if you're not able to leave your home.
Excellent. And kind of circling back, there is a stigma in general about suicide and mental health. When it comes to the veteran community, how different is that?
Sure. I think that in my experience, I was an Army Ranger for 6 years. I did 3 combat deployments. And so there's a couple stigmas. When you're actually still in the military, particularly if you have a job with a security clearance, it can be intimidating to go seek help because you may think that that's going to affect your career in some way. I think that the Department of Defense is trying to do a better job and not allowing that to be the case, but a lot of times people just don't want to take the risk, and so they'll just deal with it. There's also just sort of a culture of being strong and not letting these things get to you. And so a lot of people would deny that they had it. Also, sometimes it really doesn't come on until well after you've left the military. That was my experience personally. While I was deploying and engaged in the fight, I didn't have a whole lot of problems. I think I was just focused on what I was doing at the time. But as my life slowed down and as I got out, some of the things that may have been normal before became obvious that they weren't normal. And then, the stigma, I think, once you're out is, there's a lot of different reasons, but I think a lot of people just wouldn't know what the symptoms are. They think it's normal. And we're also trained a lot to deny any vulnerabilities at all, right? And so approaching somebody and saying, that you're having some issues is a form of being vulnerable, and that can be very difficult. So I think the job of those of us who are working in this field is to just explain that, no matter what you did or where you come from, it's quite natural to have some issues, particularly for combat veterans, but for all veterans. And secondly, that those issues can get better. I think a lot of veterans I meet think that they're simply stuck. This is the way they are. And with some help, you can get to where you want to go. So I think those are the stigmas and the solutions, in my opinion.
Do you have anything you want to add, Christa?
No, I think he covered it pretty well. I mean, I think just really where he talked about like strength is perceived as not seeking help, right? We can just deal with it. In my mind, I would like to change that message and say, strength is admitting that there's something going on and seeking that treatment. So it takes a lot of courage and bravery to do that.
And can we talk a little bit about the symptoms? That if someone's listening, they're like, well, that isn't normal. They can start taking those steps to getting help.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Christa may be better able to speak to this, but I would say anxiety, hypervigilance, paranoia, an inability to maintain good relationships, inability to be, say, in a workforce where you have to, where you're employed underneath a supervisor who's not a veteran. I think that there can be some issues there. But really, I think the main thing to me is hypervigilance. If you're constantly on guard, you're unable to relax, even around your friends or family, that would be the biggest tip-off to me.
Yeah, and I think just building on that, the hardest part of the hypervigilance piece is that in the military, you are trained to be hypervigilant and paranoid to some extent, right, for safety purposes. So a lot of veterans will say, well, that's how I keep people safe. The people who don't do that are idiots, right? But the problem is that it never stops, right? So it's exhausting. Sometimes people have difficulty controlling their anger. Sometimes they're overusing alcohol. Perhaps they're using drugs to try to manage these symptoms. Perhaps they're having nightmares. Perhaps they're not sleeping for days at a time. So those are things that you definitely want to look out for and say, hey, I think there may be something more going on here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So before we get started, we were talking about some programs that you are working to get going at the VA. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So, I think that every veteran is unique, and the treatments that work for them are unique as well. So we do offer wonderful treatments at the VA right now, and those are very effective for many people experiencing some of the simpler symptoms that Pete and I just talked about. That I'm trying to work in partnership with some of my colleagues, as well as with the American Legion and the state legislature, to install a music and art therapy programs at the VA, as well as just another form of support, and hopefully specific areas that might promote healing.
And outside of the art therapy, what other opportunities are there?
Well, I would say too, not just within the VA, but there are vet-to-vet groups throughout Indianapolis that can be great to go and meet with other veterans and see that you are not alone, that many other people are experiencing these same symptoms. You're not crazy, or whatever term you have maybe deemed yourself at this point. This is a very, and I hesitate to say, but normal experience for many veterans out there. And I think it's important to see that, to offer that support to other veterans. Also, the vet center, if you're not comfortable with the VA, if you've had a bad experience, the vet center is a good option for therapy services. And there are also many community-based mental health centers out there who are trained and educated in helping our veterans and who offer many services themselves.
Yeah, if I could just add on to that, I think that part of my issue when I got out of the military is I went from, special operations unit where I was surrounded by brothers who were willing to die for me. And then I went to a university type of a situation where most people had very little experience with what I had done in the past, but also just the fact that there was very few veterans. And so slowly I started to realize that, sometimes you got to be around other people who know what's going on, or at least know what you've been through in the past. And so in some way, getting together with some other veterans every now and then can be very cathartic. And I would definitely recommend that to anybody out there, particularly if you're in an environment that you just don't see veterans very often.
And what is a way for someone to find these groups or find programs outside where they can meet people who have similar experiences? Where can people find that?
Well, so you can Google Vet to Vet group in Indianapolis or whatever area you may be in, and it will give you a list of those local groups. There are also, if you go to, if you just seek veteran events, then there is a list. There's several calendars out there that will tell you upcoming events, especially with Veterans Day coming up. Then there are many, many veterans events that are happening around the city and in outlying counties. So also NAMI, the National Alliance for Mental Health, they have a list of support groups from around the city as well and throughout the state. So that is another resource that is for all of these other support, community-based mental health and other support groups throughout the state.
Yeah, there's a couple websites that I'd like to recommend too. One is veteranevents.org, and that just has a lot of the events that are going on in Indianapolis. And then in Marion County, they have something called the Mayor's Advisory Council on Veterans, and the website for that is vsc, that's Victor Sierra Charlie.ooo. That has some events, but it also just has amazing amount of resources of every kind that are open to veterans, from legal services to help with homelessness to healthcare and beyond. So if there's anything that somebody's going through and they don't know what benefits are out there, that's a great resource as well.
And can I have you give that one more time?
Yes, it's vsc.ooo. That's Victor Sierra Charlie.ooo.
Excellent. And for families who have a veteran who just returned back with them, what resources are available to help them with that transition, bringing their family member back?
That's a tougher one. I wish we had more caregiver support. We do run caregiver support groups at the VA hospital, but those are for veterans that are connected to our VA medical care system. I would say NAMI does do a caregiver support group, and those are all over the city, and it's excellent. And that is, for any caregiver who may be dealing with a family member with a mental health issue. I would say also, if you are transitioning from the military, whether that be the National Guard or the military, they can still access their family support specialist. And at Tyndall Armory, they have family support specialists. So if you are currently a Guard member and you are a caregiver or a family member of a Guard member, then if you contact the Tyndall Armory, they'd be happy to put you into contact with the family support counselors there.
Excellent.
Yeah, I don't know too much about the programs that are out there, but I would say that families, spouses, caregivers don't get nearly as much credit as they deserve, because it's a very difficult thing to watch a family member suffering or trying to readjust from life in the military. I would say in my personal experience, my family didn't really push hard. They realized I was struggling. I think their reaction was just to let me know that they were there and that they loved me, and to let me sort of figure it out as I went. But always knowing along the way that I had their support. So I think that's a big thing, is just to make sure that you tell them, like, you're here to help. You can't exactly understand it, but you're always here to help.
Excellent. And is there anything that I missed that you would also like to touch on about services, programs, experiences?
No, not really. I think that the Mayor's Advisory Council has a great page as far as benefits go. Feel free to reach out to veteran service officers. I'm in Wayne Township, but we have at least 2 others in Marion County. And they can put in a claim for you with the VA, but they can also hopefully direct you to whatever's going on. So what I always say to people is, doesn't matter what the issue is, give me a call, and we can figure it out, even if it's not something I can do right there in my office.
And can you give your number one more time, Pete?
Yeah, it's 317-518-0309. Excellent.
And then, Christa, can you give out your contact one more time?
Yep. So my phone number is 317-988-9388. And I will just reinforce, if someone is in crisis, please reach out to the Veterans Crisis Line at 1-800-273-8255, press 1.
Excellent. And thank you both for coming and talking to me about veterans and everything. I appreciate it.
Thanks
Thank you so much.
Thank you both for coming in and talking with me. Pete Cowden is the Wayne Township Veterans Affairs Officer, and Christa Sutton is the Suicide Prevention Case Manager from the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs. And if you need to get in contact with Pete, his contact is 317-518-0309, and he can help you connect with your Veterans Affairs officer in your township, or if you are in Wayne Township, he can provide you with emergency assistance or connect you with veterans benefits. If you want to connect with Christa, her number is 317-988-9388. And just as a reminder, the National Suicide Hotline is 1-800-273-8255, 1-800-273-TALK, and you can press 1, and that will specifically help you if you're a veteran. To access the Mayor's Advisory Council on Veterans, you can go online to vsc.ooo. Thank you for joining me. Please join me again next week when we talk with Big Brothers, Big Sisters. If you have any questions or comments, please email me at emetheny, that's EMETHENY, at radio-1.com. Until then, have a great week.
RadioNOW 100.9's Indy Connection with Emily Metheny.